Hello, fourth grade. Today we're going to be working on lesson 3.6, mental math strategies for multiplication. So you should be on page 101, and we're about to get started with our solve and share. And in this lesson, our goal is to use mental math strategies based on place value and properties of operations to multiply. So we've talked about place value in the past. That just means we're talking about your ones, tens, hundreds, or thousands, and then so on. And then properties of operations, we've talked a little bit about the distributive property, and we're going to see how we can use that for solving different types of multiplication equations. Starting our solve and share on page 101. Let's go ahead and read our math tip for the day. You can use structure to multiply the numbers in any order and make the computations easier. Show your work in the space.
Determine the products for the expressions given. Use mental math to solve. Explain your thinking. Solve these problems using any strategy you choose.
Now, an interesting feature of multiplication, it's very similar to addition in that sense, is it doesn't matter which two numbers you decide to do first. So if, for example, you wanted to do 25 times 9, you could go ahead and start it that way. But if you wanted to do 25 times 4, because maybe that's a little bit easier for you, and then you did it multiplied by 9, that's also fine. As long as you remember to multiply all of the factors that are listed, your answer or your product will be the same. And so we can go ahead and try this out. If you want, you can try 25 times 9 and then times 4. And I'm going to try 25 times 4 and then 9. So our first equation will be 25 times 4. And I know 25 times 4 will give me 100. And then times 9 will give me 900. So your answer should be 900. Now for the second equation, again, I'm going to look at which two are easier for me. In this case, 5 times 2 is 10, times 50 will give me 5,000 or 500. But I can also just try 50 times 2, 50 times 2, which will give me 100, times 5, which will give me 500. So as you're going through these equations, do the easier equations first, as in the easier factors for you to multiply, and then afterwards do the last one, and your answer should still be the same. You can go ahead and work on this last one. You can pause if you need, and we're going to get started on our video lesson.
How can you multiply mentally? Think about this question during the lesson. 3 cyclists rode their bikes the distances shown in the table. Use mental math to calculate the total distance Pam and Anna each rode. What are you asked to do? What operation will you use to solve the problem? Why? You are asked to use mental math to find the total distance Pam and Anna each rode. You will use multiplication because each total distance involves equal groups. You can use properties of operations to help multiply mentally. To find the distance Pam rode, calculate 4 times 325. Break apart 4 times 325. Which shows the correct way to use the distributive property?
Select your answer.
Use the distributive property. Multiply mentally, and then add. Pam rode 1,300 miles in 4 months. How does breaking apart a factor help you multiply 4 times 325 using mental math? What property is used in this strategy? Breaking a factor into numbers that are easier to multiply makes problems simpler to multiply mentally. The distributive property is used in this strategy.
There is more than one way to use the distributive property to do mental math. Choose a way to break apart the factor 28, which results in the easiest calculation.
According to the commutative property of multiplication, you can multiply in any order. How is the commutative property of multiplication like the commutative property of addition? The commutative property of multiplication says you can multiply in any order, just as the commutative property of addition says you can add in any order. Find the distance Anna rode. Calculate 8 times 25. Break apart 8 times 25. Use the commutative and associative properties to multiply. Multiply mentally. Anna rode 200 miles in 8 weeks. How are the commutative and associative properties used to find how far Anna rode? The commutative property is used to change the order of the factors from 4 times 2 to 2 times 4. The associative property is used to change 2 times 4 times 25 to 2 times 4 times 25.
Now you know how to multiply mentally.
In the work for 4 times 325, why was 25 not broken into 20 and 5? Explain.
So looking at 4 times 25, since we know that 4 times 20 will also give us 80, and then 4 times 5, that'll give us 20 more. That'll give you 100. But if you already know your multiplication facts, because 25, 4 groups of them, the same way when you think of 25 cents, you'll get 100 cents. And so that's why it was not broken apart. All right, we're on the guided and independent practice. Here's another example where they use compensation to multiply mentally. And so we're going to go over this as we go over the notes, so please make sure that you are ready. We're on 3.6, mental math strategies to multiply. The main word that we're using in this lesson is the commutative property of multiplication, where you can multiply in any order and the product stays the same. For example, with 2 times 3, 8 times 4, or 3 times 6. Another way we could say that, of course, is 2 times 3, which is the same way as saying 3 times 2. For 8 times 4, we have 8 times 4, which goes right here, or 4 times 8. We have 3 times 6, so you put 6 here, times 3, or 6 times 3. I can use mental math strategies based on place value and properties of operations to multiply. For example, 4 times 325 and 8 times 25. This is when we are drawing an area model. So you put the place values inside of those areas and you can multiply them out. You can even put the answers inside there directly. And so here you would do 4 times 300, and then there you would have 4 times 25. And then if you do 8 times 25 again, break it into its place value, 8 times 20, and then 8 times 5. And so if you're doing 4 times 325, 4 times 300 plus 4 times 25, you get 1,200 plus 100 more. So you should get 1,300 right here. For 8 times 25, you're doing 8 times 20 plus 8 times 5, or you can break apart the 8 into 2 and then 4. That's because 2 times 4 makes 8. And so now 2 on the outside, and then 4 times 25. So 2 times 4 times 25. 4 times 25 is 100. That's a lot easier for me to do. And then multiplied by 2, that'll give me 200. I can also use compensation to help me solve mental math by choosing close numbers to the factor. For example, 3 times 398. Since 398 is close to 400, I can add 2 to change it into an easier factor to multiply by. But I need to multiply by the number I added and remove it after. So here we have an example. 3 times 398. So changing that to make it a compatible number, we're going to add 2. So now 3 times 400, because adding 2. And you get 1,200, or 1,200. But because we added 2, and we multiplied it by 3, we had 6. So I have to remove 6 from the product because I added 3 groups of 2 originally. For number 1, why was 6 subtracted from 1,200 in that problem above? Well, when you think about it, we know that we added 2 in order to use compensation, right? And so when we added 2 and then we multiplied it by 3, what we had is 6 of that number in order to add it, to change it into that 400. So if we had a greater number than 398, in this case, right, we said that it was 400. So the product after multiplying 3 times 400 had to be adjusted to find the product of 3 times 398, not 3 times 400, because that was our equation that we used to solve, but that was a way for us to make it easier for ourselves. Let me go ahead. 6 was removed. Because 2 was added before multiplying. So now, added before multiplying by 3. And 3 times 2 equals 6. For number 2, multiply mentally to find the product, explain which strategy you use. So you have a couple of different options from up there. Maybe you want to use compensation by subtracting it. Maybe you want to use, what's it called? You want to use your place value strategies by using your area model. Whichever strategy you decide to do, make sure that you have the whole factor. And so far inside of our compensation, we've only talked about adding. So for right now, let's go ahead and try using our area model. So now we have 8 times, and then we're going to have our box. Well, it has 903. So 900 here, and then 3 there. So now 8 times 900, well, the basic fact could be 8 times 9, and that makes 72. But then we have to add 2 zeros. And then 8 times 3 will that'll give you 24. And now we need to combine both those partial products. So you have 7,224. And so that is the strategy that I used to solve that equation. Go ahead and start working on your independent practice and your problem solving on the back. But please make sure that you write your answers neatly. And of course, complete all of the questions. All right, that is the end of this lesson. I will see you in our next one.